Hello, and welcome to Idaho Birder, a podcast featuring Idaho birding members, their adventures, news, and tips. I'm your host, Tom Carroll. This is episode number 3, Bird Conservation for Everyone, with Carrie Hugo. Have you seen Joel Sartori's new book titled The Photo Arc, One Man's Quest to Document the World's Animals? Well, one of his motivations for this multi-year project stems from his understanding that half of the Earth's species could go extinct by 2100. His response was to create beautiful photographs of animals so people can see now what they could be losing forever should these species become extinct. He hopes that we'll care enough about these animals to act to prevent their extinction. But what actions should we take? Our guest, Carrie Hugo, has some practical suggestions for us. Carrie's a wildlife biologist with the BLM in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where she monitors and manages wildlife habitats and serves as BLM's migratory bird representative for Idaho. Carrie's interests in animals and conservation go way back.
I'm Carrie Hugo, and I'm a wildlife biologist for the Bureau of Land Management up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm one of the rare people probably who I knew from when I was 5 that I wanted to be a wildlife biologist. I just didn't know what it was called. I thought I wanted to be a park ranger. I kept that desire all the way through high school, so I went into college and chose my major right away and stuck with it. I always had a connection and desire to be outside. My parents took us to national parks, my sister and I was interested in elephant poaching in Africa. I did reports on all that kind of stuff as a junior high and high school student. So I've just always kind of been connected to nature and the outdoors.
Carrie earned her undergraduate degree in wildlife biology from Colorado State University and a master's degree from University of New Mexico in Las Cruces. During her academic and early career, her study subjects shifted from kangaroo rats to bats and finally to birds. Carrie's first professional bird conservation experience was as the Aplomado Falcon lead biologist for the New Mexico Fish and Wildlife Department. Work eventually led Carrie to Coeur d'Alene. I met Carrie in February at the spring meeting of the Idaho Bird Conservation Project, which is a group comprising devoted scientists, representatives from various government and non-government organizations, as well as concerned citizens. They use a well-orchestrated collaborative approach to support bird conservation efforts in Idaho. Carrie, in a very lively fashion, co-chairs the Outreach and Citizen Science Working Group.
The Idaho Bird Conservation Partnership is an organization that meets twice yearly, typically in February and October. This is essentially a group of state, federal, nonprofit or NGO organizations, private industry, any interested citizen, the master naturalists that have gotten certified with Idaho Fish Game, they attend sometimes. Audubon groups occasionally attend. And what it is it's a group that was designed so that everyone who has an influence on the conservation of birds can participate in trying to guide the management and also in trying to get science and deliver that science related to bird conservation. And then also outreach, trying to make people more aware of bird conservation, the birds where they live, and any issues, surrounding the status of those birds. We also have a research and monitoring group, which I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with the short-eared owl statewide surveys that are being conducted, but that was generated out of the research and monitoring group for the Idaho Bird Conservation Partnership. And that came from discussion by the group about the pretty significant downward trend in short-eared owl populations. Our group is very action-oriented. Instead of sitting around and talking about what could be going on or what do we know is happening in Idaho, they just jumped in and said, well, let's start getting data so we can get a picture of what's happening with short-eared owls in Idaho. And then further, we can't all do it ourselves. These routes are all over the state. So let's see if we can engage local birders and see if they'll go out and collect the data for us, and it's been a tremendous success. I'm blown away, actually, by how many people were willing and excited to step up and help collect the data. And the coolest thing is that this concept and the methodology and the protocol that IBCP set up is now being implemented in 4 states altogether and may expand even more because they're declining not just in Idaho, but throughout the western United States. And it's really cool that this little group of just people who get together twice a year created the protocol, of course, with a huge amount of effort and time from Intermountain Bird Observatory. Rob Miller and Jay Carlisle helped get this protocol and the sampling design together, but it grew into something that really is going to influence management and information for this species throughout the West, definitely within the 4-state region that folks are implementing it in. Pretty awesome. Even small little groups can do big stuff. We realized pretty early on as this organization was forming that the people out in the public who may not be professional biologists or have any direct responsibility with habitat or bird population management, there are thousands of people out there who are bird advocates who either learn about birds in their free time, they go birding, they photograph birds, they have a passion and enthusiasm for birds. A huge amount of the data that is used for assessment of bird populations comes from data that is related to bird sightings that just anybody can go out and collect, Audubon groups or people who use eBird. And so that's like multiplying and cloning biologists all over the state. And so we really wanted to try to get these folks engaged because, as everyone knows, there's never enough resources available for all of the conservation work and data needs that different agencies and entities have to have. Trying to tap into the bird enthusiasts in Idaho can really help us maximize the data and information we have and the impact we can have on some of the issues we're trying to address.
Carrie, how did you come to chair the Outreach and Citizen Science Working Group, and what does the group do?
Since I'm an extrovert, I was a logical person to be asked to chair the Outreach and Citizen Science group. And so, I think I've been doing it for 4 years. Myself and Deniz Aygen were the original co-chairs, and we still are, so I don't know how long we've been doing it. She's an excellent educator and outreach person as well as a fabulous birder and biologist, so we make a good pair. Our group is basically focused on trying to get some of the issues that the larger group as a whole has determined we need to take action on. We try to bring that out into the public. And one thing I was going to mention that's really fairly unique about the Idaho Bird Conservation Partnership is rather than have like a single species focused groups or committees, like this committee is concerned about long-billed curlew and this committee over here is addressing brewer sparrow. Instead, we have divided up into these different working groups, which really this system has worked out quite well. So we have the pressing issues group, which is kind of the foundation for where the partnership goes, because what that group does is tries to compile all of the issues that birds are facing in Idaho and then prioritize where we think we should be trying to affect management or conservation for that issue. And then that kind of guides what all the other groups and committees, working groups, do. For example, one of the pressing issues that came up early on in the organization's history was monofilament line and how birds get entangled in monofilament line. And so this pressing issues group works together to create an action plan of things that could be done or need to be done to try to start addressing that. Then they pass it on, assignments essentially, to these other working groups. For outreach, we went to Coeur d'Alene, Audubon, and asked if they would be willing to fund putting out monofilament recycling bins and designing signs to go at angling hotspots in the Panhandle. So we got that done. We put up monofilament bins. We got the signs out. It was in the paper. We're collecting monofilament and educating people about the hazard that causes to birds. So that's just an example of the stepwise process of how these different groups work.
How does the larger group inform the direction of the working groups?
Everybody participates in the discussion of what they feel are the issues, and then the group kind of digests all of that and dissects it and looks at all the information about each issue. Is it statewide? Is it really local? And how much could we actually have an impact on it? Is it something that's simple or complex? And that all goes into ranking these different issues. But I will give some examples of some of the things that IBCP has done as a result of coming up with these pressing issues and trying to implement action plans. So the short-eared owl was one example. Another big one is helping federal agencies be more informed when they make management decisions as far as migratory birds in general and any special species concerns. One of the things the group has done is come up with providing traveling workshops, essentially, where folks from the partnership make presentations and provide tools for federal land managers and biologists so that they can be as informed as possible when they're analyzing the impacts of projects, when they're working with private landowners through the NRCS programs for agriculture. And these workshops have occurred all over the state. The goal, of course, being to, one, make ourselves available as far as helping the biologists or the land managers if they need more information, and two, outlining some easy tools that these folks can use and access when they're analyzing projects or proposing projects. So that's been a big one. Also, the group has really been active in providing expertise for the State Wildlife Action Plan, which is hopefully going to be in final form here pretty soon, but that's a document that Idaho Fish Game generates that essentially prioritizes and establishes which non-game species are of concern and what needs to be done. The folks at Idaho Bird Conservation Partnership have been really involved in trying to help with determination of those species and what the issues are and what could be done. So that's on a large scale. I mentioned monofilament line. We also have a action plan for outdoor cats because that's a huge impact on bird populations everywhere. If folks want to learn more about cats, going to the American Bird Conservancy website on outdoor cats, I think people would be astounded to know that outdoor cats are the most responsible for bird deaths in North America. I don't know how to say that in a better way, but if you were to look at a bar graph of the different sources of bird mortality, whether it was pesticides, collisions with windows, getting hit by vehicles, they estimate, I think, almost 1 billion birds yearly are killed by outdoor cats in North America, which blows your mind, really. Just trying to get the word out about this is something that people can do locally to help birds, which is keep your cats inside. And that's not always a message people want to hear, but it's still a reality that cats are a huge source of mortality for birds, and not just birds, also small mammals and reptiles too. They're hunters. That's what they do. Even if they have a full belly, it's hard to suppress the instinct of a little carnivore, which is what a cat is. And I love cats, but they're still little carnivores.
Carrie, you mentioned properly disposing of fishing line and keeping our cats indoors as a couple of ways to help us with bird conservation. But what else can the average person do to make a difference?
Well, I'm really glad that you asked that, because I think a lot of times for folks that are connected to the environment and conservation, a lot of times it can be overwhelming when you look at all of the different impacts that humans cause and create in the natural world, and you can feel kind of helpless about being able to do anything about it. So I made a little list on a local level, like just what you can do within your home and your community. Some really easy things are walk around your property and look for uncapped pipes, because uncapped pipes are another threat that we haven't really discussed yet. But for cavity nesting birds like bluebirds or swallows or chickadees, they're genetically programmed to explore cavities that could potentially be nesting sites. And so when you have these uncapped pipes, they can go into the pipe trying to investigate it. And then because the pipes are either slick on the sides or the diameter is too small, they can't get out. And until Nevada Department of Fish and Game did a study a few years ago, nobody realized the magnitude of this issue for birds. They had a bunch of uncapped mine claim markers in Nevada that the estimates of how many birds were dying in these uncapped PVC mine claim markers was astounding. Hundreds of thousands of birds, because there were so many markers all over Nevada. So that's part of it. What it made me realize, and what our outreach group is trying to do, is make people aware that these uncapped pipes are everywhere. It's not just mine claim markers. And once I became aware of it, I walked around our rural property and found 3 immediately that I never even would have noticed if I hadn't become aware of this threat. One of them was our satellite dish post, and one of them was an irrigation pipe, and one was a part of a play set, a swing set that our daughter uses. That's one thing you can do. Go around and look for uncapped pipes in your property and cap them so that they can't be entered into by birds. Another thing is window collisions. Very similar to cats, it's astounding how many birds die because of window collisions in North America. And the majority, a lot of people immediately think of like the big shiny skyscrapers in cities, and there's no question that those are a part of the problem. But the estimates by researchers indicate that collisions on just residences and small businesses and just regular buildings make up the majority of window collision deaths for birds. So put something on your window that allows birds to see it and not see the reflection of nearby habitat is one thing. And a good resource for that as well is the American Bird Conservancy website. If you just Google American Bird Conservancy and then window collisions, they have a lot of information and some tools and suggestions for how you can reduce window collisions. Another one that most anyone listening can do right now to help birds is drink bird-friendly coffee. We have migrating birds that are all our beloved warblers and flycatchers and tanagers and orioles that go down to Central and South America for the winter. And if their rainforest habitat is gone and has been replaced by coffee plantations, they no longer have wintering habitat. Coffee plantations, I wish I had my numbers in front of me, but people would be astounded how many hectares of the surface of the earth are covered in coffee plantations, because humans drink a lot of coffee, a ton of coffee. And so if these plantations essentially clear-cut rainforests and plant an industrialized coffee plantation, that habitat is gone. If you can switch and pay a little more, of course it costs more, but you're drinking organic coffee that isn't being sprayed by pesticides, so when the little warblers get there, the bugs are all gone because the plants have been sprayed. And you can drink your cup of coffee without feeling guilty, because this bird-friendly coffee is coffee that has been certified by the Smithsonian, that it's grown in shade-grown coffee plantations where they leave the upper canopy of the rainforest and plant the coffee plants below so that habitat is maintained. So that's huge, and that's an easy thing to do. So you could just, Birds and Beans is a popular company for shade-grown coffee, but there are several different producers. Google that and change your coffee. It probably only amounts to like a nickel a day or something more for your couple of cups of coffee to make that change, and it has a huge impact on songbird populations especially.
Thank you very much, Carrie.
Yeah, you bet.
Carrie shared some simple strategies any of us can adopt to help us with bird conservation. Would you like to get more involved? The organizations and websites Carrie mentioned are listed below. The next Idaho Bird Conservation Partnership meeting is in October 2017. Simply like the IBCP Facebook page to receive announcements. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of Idaho Birder. Until then, happy birding. The theme music for Idaho Birder is Duettino for Two Bassoons, composed by Eugene Bosa and performed by Arthur Grossman, Bruce Granger, and Terry Ewell. Licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike license.